it becomes worthy of purchase. There is no exact mandate that they must buy. There is still that need of the government as majority owner to sell the concept, to sell the profitability, or at least sell, if not profitability as a corporation, it must be very clear in showing that the benefits of managing the risks properly far outweigh any type of small losses or break-even concept that the private sector will incur.
Okay, what are the advantages of it being majority owned by government at this time?
Well, at this time, I was speaking to Deputy Governor Espinilla, and in the context of what it is designed to do for the small, micro, and medium entrepreneur, it feels like a utility. It feels like almost a service where we find information that is relevant to them and assist them in moving up the value chain. But over a period of time, as it begins to show profitability, then the private sector might be more adept at managing it, especially in the context that we're facing today of, let's say, hiring professionals to manage and further the system in terms of context and concepts for developing other credit rating models for other more efficient uses of data.
And at that time, you won't need any more annual appropriation from
Yes.
government. Give us a timeline. How long do you think this will take?
Well, we've sort of divided it, just for context, by 2015 June, we will start accepting data contributions from at least 28 different financial institutions, ranging from large-scale universal banks all the way to the Midas group of Dr. Aris Alip, which represents about a large amount of a percentage of the microfinance lending. By that time, we will get about 2 to 3 million data subjects, and we should be able to show some type of revenue stream in the process of cleaning the data. We hope that at least within the next 2 years, we should be able to show a type of revenue stream that will indicate its profitability. Many credit bureaus in the world and credit registries do not show profitability within a 5-year time span. So we'd like to adopt that very conservative model that profitability should be seen in about 5 years. But we expect that if our estimations are correct and there are more significant, I misspoke, other significant uses of credit data other than just loans that will be beneficial to the Filipino people, then I think we can accelerate that profitability model.
All right. Regardless of profitability, what would be the advantages then of private ownership? I mean, private ownership in the majority position.
I suppose if you look at it in its worst case situation, the privatization of the credit information system would remove it from a political arena. The information is so sensitive that if one might encounter a less than moral government, then it might put pressure on whether the BSP or the SEC or the president, whoever is running the company, to expose that data. Data security is one of the biggest, the hottest topics in the last 2 conferences that I've attended. Last month it was in Morocco for Middle East and North Africa credit bureaus that are being set up. And I just actually said, if I look a little disoriented, I just came in from Dubai, where a consumer credit conference was held, and security was probably the biggest bogey in the whole room, that people were concerned that if the goal of the CIC is to align its credit reporting so that everyone from an individual to the entire country can view the risk profiles of all the industries, then certainly the purity of that data should be the top concern, and perhaps moving it into private sector hands would be that best way to do it.
Now, the first problem would be collecting the data.
Yes, sir.
And I recall that there were fears that certain big banks would not like to give the data that is required in order to complete an information, for example, or a folder or a file. And I think that was one of the reasons why those who argued for government majority was that the government, the BSP in this particular instance, would be able to exercise moral suasion on those big banks that normally would want to keep their secrets to themselves. Do you fear that that will happen if the government is in the minority?
Actually, no, sir. In fact, one of the more surprising outcomes of this initial phase of engaging the financial institutions and asking them to contribute the data is that I'm not sure about the rankings, but two of the larger banks that were not expected to give because of their size and seemingly independence to the other banks are the first in line to give this information. But with regards to your fear that certain bits of information may not be made available, as described to us by many of our consultants, that every country has a white list, a certain set of names that may or may not be included. The BSP, despite the fact that we are not directly under their supervision, has shown a very strong support for this, and the banks have been very receptive. In fact, though we are mandated by law, their line always to us is, as long as the central bank creates a circular or gives an order, we will comply. And I think to the advantage of the CIC today, the past financial crises have caused a very strict sense of regulatory compliance. And that alone, that plus the very cooperative BSP and a very cooperative SEC, has moved the banks to comply regardless of whether it's in private hands or not.
Now, I remember last year we thought that your budget was too low and we tried to get it increased. Did you get that increase eventually? No.
Yes, Benji, may I ask our financial advisor to speak on my behalf?
Yes, we did. Okay.
And this year you're asking for how much?
45 million.
I have 138 here.
No, the subsidy request is at 45 million, but the
I see.
budget is
Yes.
at 138.
Was that your request to DBM?
We had a different figure originally, but we came to an agreement after discussions. The difference lay mainly in the fact that our original estimate made assumptions on the salary rates being market rates, and since the CPCS is still pending, then we have to continue using SSL rates for
What is still pending?
If I can
Yeah.
explain. I believe that because when the CIC was formed under law, it was made clear that the CIC would be exempt from SSL. Somewhere along the line, and I'm not exactly sure about what RA that was, but there was a hold put on all salaries, and we were reverted to SSL. In fact, so immediately our budgets went down. We were no longer paying market rates. But to speak frankly, that is actually one of the issues being encountered by the CIC today. The nature of the companies of such a high level that, especially in the IT space, the current rates of the current SSL rates do not give us a very good chance of hiring the right people for the jobs that they have to undertake.
And how did you intend to achieve exemption from the SSL at this time?
Well, the GCG was of the opinion that as a business that the government owns, the CIC was worthy of exemption from this SSL, and is in the process of creating a memo. In turn, the private sector owners of the CIC have agreed to, once that memo is released, to support that memo and to ask to petition as an industry that the SSL be removed and that we be allowed to hire using industry rates, if only because the mission criticality of the project is so dependent on the kind of personnel you have running, not only from a technical competence but from a trust issue aspect as well.
But I'm glad. So you won't need legislation for that, corrective legislation.
Well, it's still when the GCG sends out that memo, it will still be subject to the approval of the president. And I'm not sure if additional legislation. Of course, I'm not a lawmaker nor a lawyer. I don't know if additional legislation can revert whatever order the president made to bring back the SSL into the GOCCs.
Yes, I'm not even familiar with that order saying that everything should revert to certain
Actually,
institutions.
that was an initiative of the GOCC to review salary rates of, GCG, to review salary rates of all GOCCs.
GCG initiated.
Yes, and they hired Tower Watson to do the study.
Yeah.
And because
So if
initially,
they initiated it, they can reverse it.
Well, yes, that would be the subject of the memo. But again, still subject to presidential approval.
Yeah. What is your total complement today? Personnel complement.
Well, we are targeting to have 40 as our total complement, but as of today, I think we just hired someone a couple of days ago. So
we have about 5, and we're hiring 3 more within the week, hopefully. And we're still hiring this month, but we had difficulty getting the right people.
Is that enough? I mean,
40.
you seem to be the for lack of a better term, the major information gathering system in this country. Would 50 be enough to do the job? And also, are all your computer systems in place already? Software, hardware?
Yes, the bulk of our plantilla, our organizational chart, is actually skewed towards IT, and that's represented in our org chart, the approved org chart that we got. The trick will be, as we are, sorry, let me backtrack a little bit. The process itself of acquiring data, once the data streams are set with the financial institutions, will be really a matter of course. It will just be a matter of to minimize it, clicking a button. The larger part of the system will actually be how to deal with customer complaints, how to deal with issues arising from the natural dirtiness of the data from the start, and then as it progresses and gets cleaner. The way to address that is to actually accelerate the setting up of private credit bureaus, through which core information will be requested from them by either the public or other businesses, so that they themselves can assist us in dealing with the issues, so they can be our frontliners. But that said, our plantilla does take into consideration a certain amount of interaction between the CIC and the public, and if it should exceed that amount, then there's really nothing that can prevent us from outsourcing at least the day-to-day transactional reporting of any types of complaints. So that can be quickly scaled up with the outside of the CIC complement.
All right. I shall submit your budget for approval. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you very much, Senator.
Unless you have any more comments, I shall adjourn this hearing.
Well, Senator, maybe I'd just like to bring up an issue that was covered in the newspaper a few months ago, when a certain COA finding was presented. It wasn't a finding. What do they call it? An observation. An observation regarding the language of a DBM report on how it recommends we spend money, and the interpretation of the COA. To make it short, the DBM found certain items within our proposed budget and said, if possible, reduce or remove. The COA, upon audit, looked at this and I would say arbitrarily chose the remove part when we had chosen to reduce. And they very clearly said in their report that their observation was based on the wording of a DBM, that same DBM report. We then presented to the COA that if we could get a clarification from the DBM that we had the option to reduce or remove, then that would remove that finding, and they said yes. And just a few weeks ago, last week, we did receive that DBM note amendment correcting the notion that the budgets we had spent on particular line items were disallowed. So we were able to clear that up, and I just thought we'd bring that up because at some point in time that may be brought up again.
Good. That it?
Yes, that is it. Thank you very much, Mr. Senator.
Well, thank you for coming. This hearing is hereby adjourned.
Thank you.
You see our bingo?
I know.
That's what they have to bring to put us here.
I was so surprised when I walked in. I thought it
big
was
party
I
going
thought it
on.
was a gag. But I forgot to say happy anniversary, 98th anniversary to the Senate.
98 ba?
98 na daw. So I'm expecting that 2 years from now it's going to be a big bash.
98 ba? They're counting the Senate from 1923. Huh? 1916 ba? Jones Act? Oh, good Lord.
It's actually quite exciting, Senator, the progress that we're making. I know. I know. But but you know, strangely, it feels like we're late to the party as far as global credit reporting is. But as early as they've started, many of them are starting from the basis of regulatory compliance and worldwide compliance, worldwide standards. There's no real pressure from the business side to make their systems profitable. On the other hand, we're starting from a completely opposite perspective where the economy is hot enough that it requires this to be able to manage the risk. So our possibility of profitability and usability is actually higher.
I forget.